files on my desktop named dog.java and dogtest.java. So we're going to show some more interaction between these two Java files. First, I'm going to highlight them, right-click them, and then click Edit with Notepad++. Then I'm going to split them by grabbing the tab and pulling it off to the right so that I can have them side by side. I could right click down here and click Show Window Side by Side. Okay, first of all, on the left we've got class dog. This is going to be our template class. And then to the right we have class dog test, where we're going to make an object reference variable and then use the things that we have in the dog class. The dog class is pretty simple. We only have one instance variable and it's string name. We only created, I'm taking this straight out of the book, I'm just explaining it. We only have one method. We have a place for two more methods that we could actually be creative and put some text output in those two. Maybe I'll do that while we're here. But the public void bark will use the system.out.println command, and it's going to give us the name. So it's going to actually use the instance variable name, and it's going to concatenate it with the plus symbol, and then we're going to have this string literal, all of these words inside the double quotes, a space, barks, rough, 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 and then all these exclamation points. So that's what our bark is going to do. So the dog only has a name and a bark at this point. So then over here at the class dog test, we use the keyword class, we give it the name dog test, we have the public static void main string args execution statement. The first thing we want to do is we're going to use the name of the class, which is dog, first. Then we're going to give it an object reference variable, D1, and we're going to set it equal to new dog. That way we have a reference that's actually pointing to a new dog object. Once we do this entire statement, we can use this object reference variable with the dot operator to do things with the instance variables or the methods in the dog class. So we start off with D1, and then we've got the dot operator, and then we're calling the bark method. And then we have D1.name. So we're going to use this name instance variable and we're going to give it a value of Cocoa Puff. Well, I want to explain to you before I even run this that if we look at the bark method, system.out.println name plus barks rough, rough, rough. Well, at this point, since the code starts from the top and trickles down like a waterfall to the bottom, at this point, we didn't create a d1.name. We created the d1.name down here. So we're going to attempt to call this method before we even gave it a name. So what's going to happen in the output will be, I'm bringing it up now so that when I do finally get to running it, it will be the first thing that shows up because there is no name set yet. So we'll just see how that works in a moment. And I want to move next to the dog array. So here we created a single object reference variable for that dog class. Here we're going to get into arrays, which is pretty cool. You use the word dog, the name of the class, just like you do with the single object reference variable, but you use these straight brackets here with nothing in it to, this is the symbol for an array. So if you were going to read this in English, this would be dog array. And then this right here, my dogs, is kind of like another reference the same way D1 is. Okay, so we have dog array my dogs equals new dog But because this is an array, which is basically a list of elements, we need to put a number in here to indicate how large we want this array. Well, this dog array is going to have 3 elements in it, so that's why there's a 3 in there. So again, this is going to make a dog array for the dog class. Dog array symbol, my dogs equals new dog, and in that symbol put a number 3. The second thing that we do is put some dog elements in it. In order to do that, knowing that this is a list of 3 items, and also to let you know arrays start off at an index of 0. So this is basically our little laundry list of dogs. We use the reference variable that we created right here, my dogs. Then we have to use the array symbol with the index inside. The first one again is going to be 0 because that's how arrays work, and equals new dog. So it's kind of like repeating yourself a little bit. Here we created the array, the reference to the array, and then actually linked it to the dog class, gave it a number of elements for the array, and here you have to use that reference, and each single list, the first one, the second one, and the third one, you're going to set it to new dog. This is going to create a brand new dog object that this is going to be linked to. And I said first, second, and third, but to repeat myself yet again, arrays start at index 0, then they go to 1, then they go to 2. Okay, then we do a my dogs with the index of 1 equals new dog. And then here, this is a little different. My dogs with the index of 2, we are setting to, of all things, we are setting to this object reference variable that we created up here. This doesn't have a brand new pointer to a dog object. This is going to basically have a copy of what this is. So if we were to ask for my dogs2, what is my dogs2.name? Since this is pointing to D1, D1.name is Cocoa Puff. That's what the name would be for my dogs with the index of 2. And we'll see that when I run it. But we're still not done. Here I pointed this array element to this, which is already given a name, but here we don't have any names for the 0 index and the first index, the first 2 of this array, we have no name, so we have to set it. So you use that reference variable that we created here, and same thing with the index, use the dot operator, use the instance variable from the dog class, and set it to a name that you want your first dog to be. And you do the same thing for the next element. My dog's 1 in that bracket with the dot operator. Then go ahead and pull out your instance variable from the dog class and set it to another name. Now here I actually set this to its own name. So I'm going to run this a couple of times. The first time I'm going to run it, it's going to show you what my dogs with the index of 2, when it's set to D1, it's going to show you that the output's going to be Cocoa Puff. When I take this note off so that this is no longer green, then it's going to trickle down, and this is going to give you the name for my dogs 2 at that point. But right now we have it commented out, so it's not going to do that. It's going to give you Cocoa Puff. Okay, and here's a question that the book made you think about. So what do you think my dog's index 2 name is? So we have system.out.print, and this is in my last video when I finally wound up, I wanted a name to a book and the author to the book to spit out. I wound up coming in my class over here, and I had a method that I wound up putting the name like this. I put it right inside here. Well, this is another way that I could have done that. I could have had system.out.print, and then I could have had system.out.println. I was trying to do it the opposite way. In that particular instance, the first thing, this first system.out.print was print line, and I was trying to do the second one, system.out.print, thinking that whatever this was would tack onto this sentence, and that was just backwards. Print means that the insertion point after this text, the last dog in the array's name is, the insertion point with just print will be right there, right following the line. It won't drop down. If this was print ln, then it would drop down and then go ahead and print this. So that's another way that I could have did the other video. I could have did the print first and then the print line. But anyway, I'm starting to confuse this video. System.out.print, the last dog in the array's name is. So this is commented out, so it means nothing. And it is set to D1. And D1 created a name up here. So if you were going to guess what it would be, I already told you. And here is how we spit that out. System.out.print line, the name of the reference of the array, and the index of the array with the dot operator and name. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to loop through the array. Again, this is the array. This is 1, 2, 0, 1, and 2 elements of the array. We've got the first two names right there, the third name up here. We're going to loop through while x is less than my dog's length. My dog's x dot operator bark, and then it's going to increment x up 1, and then it's going to go back up here to the while again. So we're starting off with x as 0, and the dot length is something that Java knows how to. We created the length right here. The dog array is going to have a length of 3. So with x starting off as 0, as long as x is less than, I just told you that my dog's dot length is 3, so the condition is 0 less than 3. That's a true condition. So as long as that condition is true, it's going to do this. My dog's, and x started off at 0, so it's going to say my dog's 0 dot bark. Well, let's look at the bark again. Bark is over here. It's going to look for my dog's 0, which the first thing it's going to do in the print line is it's going to look for the name. My dog's 0 is right here. We set the name to Harry. So the very first thing that we should see is Harry barks ruff, ruff, ruff. And then x is going to be incremented by 1, so x is going to become 1 right here. Then it's going to go back up to the while loop, and it's going to ask, is 1 less than 3? And that's still true. So my dog's, and then now x has been changed to 1. It was changed down here, then it went up here. So my dog's with the index of 1 dot bark. Again, it's going to come up here, and it's going to call this method. It's going to look for the name for that my dog's 1. Well, right here, my dog's 1 dot name is Paige, so the next line of code should be Paige barks ruff, ruff, ruff. Then it's going to increment that 1 to a 2, and then the condition is going to go back up here to the while again. It's going to ask, is 2 less than 3? And that is true. So then it's going to go my dog's with an index of 2 dot bark. It's going to go back up here to name. My dog's dot 2, we did not create as a new dog, and I commented out the naming of my dog's index 2. We set it to D1, but again, we called the D1, we used the D1 to call the bark method before we gave it a name. So it doesn't have a name yet at this point. So something strange is going to come out of this, if I'm not mistaken. After I show you how this runs, I'm going to take the D1.bark and put it underneath the D1.name, and you should see the difference in how the code runs. Instead of it being confused because it tried to do the bark before the name, it will work better. But I have to run that 2 times to show you the difference. Let's see. I could be wrong. I know the very first bark right here definitely happens before the Cocoa Puff is named. So this is going to come out strange, but I can't remember when this hits that second one if it's still going to come off strange or if it's going to actually name Cocoa Puff. So we'll see when I run it. Okay, so then 2 is incremented to 3. And then it's going to come back up here to the while again, and it's going to say, is 3 less than 3? Because again, I told you my dogs.length, when we created the array, it's 3. Well, 3 is not less than 3. That's not a true statement. So since that'll be a false statement at this time, it's going to ignore everything in this loop, and it's basically going to be finished. The program will be finished. So like I said, we didn't do anything in the public void eat or the public void chase cat. This is just something we could work on shortly. So I showed you all the code for both of these. Let's take a run and go over how this output is. Oops. Oh, I never understand why sometimes it doesn't let me in there. See how I just tried, does not let me go in there. Alright, let me put these down for a second. There we go. I gotta hit run, CMD. Here it is. Like before, I have to type CD for change directory and type the word desktop if I could spell. And then I have to Java C because I have to compile this dog test class. Again, remember we are compiling the dog test class because of this. This is where the public static void main string args statement is. If we had 4 or 5 files up here, the one that we would have to compile would be whatever has the public static void main string arg statement in it. Okay, Java C dog test .java, enter. Please compile. I'm too tired to make mistakes right now. I mean, I'm too tired to want to make mistakes right now. Okay, good. It compiled cleanly. Now we're going to run it. Java dog test. Okay, this is what I was going to tell you. The very first thing we got was null. Null barks rough, rough, rough. Null meaning that when we got to this d1.bark, we didn't have a name yet. So when it obeyed this method, the system.out.println, there was no name set. So what we wound up getting was the word null, and then we got the rest of the method, which is this string that says barks rough, rough, rough. Okay, when I switch these two, which I will after I go over the rest of this code, I'm going to swap these two and put the name above bark and put bark last, then you won't see null. It won't have the word null again. The second line is the last dog in the array's name is Cocoa Puff. And this I think I already let you understand before we even ran it. The last dog in the array's name, well, we created the arrays right here. And the last dog is this one. This is the last element in the array, and we set it to D1, which goes up here, and we see that I told you I'm tired. D1.name is Cocoa Puff. So when I take the comment off of this one that actually says my dog's 2.name equals Stormy, since this is flowing from the top to the bottom, it should actually overwrite the fact that this is saying my dog's 2 is D1. It's also going to say my dog's 2.name. It's going to be basically renaming it from Cocoa Puff to Stormy when I take the comments off of this. Um, okay, let's see. Harry barks ruff, ruff, ruff. Paige barks ruff, ruff, ruff. And Coco barks ruff, ruff, ruff. My dog's one name is Harry. My dog's zero name is Harry, which is the first element. My dog's one name is Paige, Harry Paige. And again, the last one is Cocoa Puff, simply because we set it to Cocoa Puff right here. We set it to D1 and D1's name was set to Cocoa Puff. So let me make those subtle changes and rerun it so you see the difference. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this bark to underneath name. I'm going to save this, and the only thing that should change is that this won't say null. It should say Cocoa Puff barks ruff, ruff, ruff. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to compile it again, and I'm going to run it again. See? So instead of null, Cocoa Puff barks ruff, ruff, ruff. Okay? So that was the one change. What was the other one? Even though this is set to D1 and D1's name is Cocoa Puff here, because this code goes from top to bottom, I'm going to take the comment off of this, and my dog's name equals Stormy. This is going to rename this. It's just going to rename it. So let me save it, and let me go back here. Hit my up arrow until I find Java C to compile it. Hit my down arrow to hit Java to run it. And Cocoa Puff barks ruff, ruff, ruff. The last dog in the array's name is Stormy. See, it overwrote or overwritten this. Overwrote? I don't know. It changed it from being Cocoa Puff to Stormy. And I thought there was one other thing that I wanted to try. Oh, wait, wasn't there something else I wanted to try? Maybe that was it. But one thing I did before I started this video was I didn't notice this typo. It's supposed to be x equals x plus 1 to increment whatever x is up by 1. Well, I typed that. And let me show you what happens when you have something like x equals 1, which I guess makes no sense at all, if it'll do it again. For the longest, I couldn't figure out why it was running like that. It wasn't, the while loop was basically going on forever. It was not working properly. See that? It's just going to keep going on and on and on, and I'm like, oh crap, what do you do? It's just running and running and running. Well, if you get one of these endless loops, hold in your control key and tap C, like if you're going to do a control copy, and it'll stop it in its tracks. And sometimes that'll happen if you have something wrong with your while loop. If you have like this, or if you don't have this increment in here at all. If you don't have this increment in here at all, which basically I can comment this out, that increment wasn't right. X equals 1. It wasn't incrementing. So it was the same thing as me commenting this out. What that does is int x equals 0. While x is less than my dog's length, which again, the dog's length was created as 3, do this. Well, if you don't change that 0 to another number and it comes back up here, then it's still 0. So it's going to ask, is 0 less than 3? And it's going to do this. It's going to go back up here. It's still 0. So it's an infinite loop, and it's going to go on forever and ever and ever. And when that happens to you, because it definitely will, if you get into coding, it will do it at one time or another. Don't freak out. Just hit Control C, and it'll stop the execution of that infinite loop. All right, that's it for this one. And I think I'm done for the night.